Yeah, we're live.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I trust that you all see us. We are online as one way to come together in moments of distance and separations. I have the chance and honor to be the one that will introduce you to today's guests of the second moment of the Roma Biennial 2021, which is also the second biennial, Roma Biennial. I will do it by introducing you to today's topic, or that topic of the second phase, which is resistance and resilience. On the 16th of May, we remember the uprising of the Romani people and the so-called Gypsy family camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau, and we celebrate their strength to resist the Nazi regime despite the seemingly hopeless conditions and exhaustion. On the 16th of May 1944, the SS decided to close the camp and murder all inmates in gas chambers. But the inmates seized improvised weapons and barricaded themselves in their barracks. The SS, presumably fearing a mass uprising throughout the concentration camp, called off the operation. A few weeks later, about 3,000 strong men and women were transported to other camps before another attempt was made to liquidate the camp on the 2nd of August 1944. Thanks to this act of resistance, many lives were saved. Even today, many Roma, Black, Muslim, queer communities and people of color, especially women, have to show courage and resilience every day to fight against the system of oppression. Especially for people who experience intersectional discrimination, the struggle for their self-determination and existence is ongoing. In the second phase, the biennial explores different perspectives of resistance and resilience. And this is how also you see me here, a woman that has been labeled as an external factor, which is the skin, or at least the pigmentation, black, to come together with artists that are in constant confrontation against ideologies of exclusion and separation. We are at a time when the hegemonic societies questions its own parameters, as it sees people of their own communities that have no home, homeless people in Europe, receiving a fine in the time of COVID, in Germany, for instance, an amount in the 4-digit range for being in contact with people. We are at a time when in the UK, the legislation is discriminating people who reside on any public or private land in vehicles without permission from the landowner. We are in a moment in which the option to hide or to resist is a threat for those who are stigmatized by ideologies of visibility, rendered invisible in the context of the identification of the ideologic Western understanding, with the projection of white as a constant commonplace. We are in a time-place in which the bourgeoisie has shifted to the space between non-action and right-wing reactionary dividing rule. How to be together in times of constant separations. I would like to cite one scholar which has been in constant reflection of that system of division, and this is Sylvia Wynter, as an introduction of the topics we're in today, and that you as artists are tackling on and bringing into memory as an ongoing resistance for centuries. Sylvia Wynter, in her collection of writings on being human as praxis, writes, as studies of contemporary neocolonialism as well as of its predecessors, colonialism and post-colonialism, reveal, the West, over the last 500 years, has brought the whole human species into its hegemonic, now purely secular, which means post-monotheistic, post-civic, mono-humanist, therefore itself also transsumptively liberal mono-humanist model of being human. This is the version in whose terms the human has now been redefined since the 19th century on the natural scientific model of a natural organism. This is a model that supposedly pre-exists rather than coexists with all the models of other human societies and their religions or cultures. That is, all human societies have their ostensibly natural scientific organic basis, with their religions, cultures being merely superstructural. All the peoples of the world, whatever their religions, cultures, are drawn into the homogenizing global structures that are based on the model of a natural organism world systemic order. This is the enacting of a uniquely secular, liberal, monohumanist conception of the human, man, as Homo economicus, as well as of its rhetorical overrepresenting of that member class conception of being human, as if it is the class of classes of being human itself. Guess what happens? Its empirical results for both good and ill have been no less large scale, yet at the same time, no less genre specifically caused. So that's a terrifying thing with the Time report. She talks about a news that is talking about how the nature has declined because of human actions. So that's a terrifying thing with the Time report. It thinks the causes of global warming are human activities, but they are not. The Maasai who were and are being displaced have nothing to do with global warming. It's all of us, the Western and mimetically westernized middle classes, after we fell into the trap of modeling ourselves on a mimetic model of the Western bourgeoisie's liberal monohumanist man. Welcome again to that panel that has been conceived by Delaine and Hamza Butici. As a short introduction, because we will have time throughout this conversation to talk about the works and activities in detail. Delaine you are a cross-disciplinary artist, creating installations, performance, photography, and film. We will talk about your works that focus on identity, race, gender, sexuality, and the continued violence and exclusions against whoever is perceived as, quote unquote, the other within society. You were one of the 16 artists who were part of Paradise Lost, the first Roma Pavilion Venice Biennial 2007. You have worked in several biennials. It is also important that you have worked with your late husband, the artist Damien Lebas, that has with you conceived the Roma Biennial. The first edition was in 2016, and part of further presences during biennials was during the Berlin Biennial of last year, 2020. Hamza Butici, as one activist in various areas, you're based in Berlin, and I would say few words of your actions, which will of course be having more moments of reflection throughout this conversation. So you have been in Zurich, moved then to Berlin, and you're performing and directing in theaters. For example, you have directed in Ballhaus Nonnenstraße, Maxim Gorki Theater, and smaller theaters. And since 2007, you have been working as an independent theater and media educator at various Berlin schools. It's also important to say that you are the founder of Roma Trial, that is with actions of artistic presences defying that stigmatization of the people stigmatized as the other in hegemonic societies. So welcome to all of you. I was thinking about an entry point, and I was also thinking about who would start. And as it's practice in cultures of togetherness, we give the first moment to the guests. As you are curators, the co-curators of the biennial, I would start with the guests and with the collective as one important aspect of defying this separation. And so I would say it will be good to talk about works of artists while also seeing what you're doing, at least you have that moment of being immersed in a few possibilities we have online. And so for that, I will share my screen just shortly so that we can see you later also more vividly on screen. And I will come to that work, which is one of the first works. Sorry. Yes, of the Roma Jam Session Art Collective. You're based in Switzerland, which is also important to acknowledge because we are situated, we are in this context of politics and society. And you are here criticizing one moment which is centered in the 19th century, but has a continuity in Switzerland. And this is the fact that artists and cultural actors in France, but also elsewhere, have been understanding their work by, if it's conscious or not directly conscious, but this is a fact, exploiting the works of people. And we need to say this is labor, because it is not work that is self-identific, that is one that is part of an identification, but it is one that serves a system. Would you like to talk about that work, Tableau Très Vivant?
Yeah, with pleasure. Yeah, we can try to little bit unwrap it. What you see here is actually a little scene which we just did for the photographer. I mean, and the subject of Tableau Très Vivant came from the research in the 19th century, where we found out that there was a big race against all people who had no fixed domicile and who lived somewhere in between. So there was the police, the police of the Swiss police in Bern, in the main city, was deciding to hunt these people and prison them, like criminalize them, prison them, and then photograph them. And it was very interesting that this photographer was a portrait photographer of the bourgeoisie in Bern. And he used the same setting in a way, but he had, for being able to do that, he shaved the people, he dressed them, etc., to make them kind of, he just did it like that. So there was it was not the police asking him to do that, but he did it because it was his photographical eye demanding that. And for me, it was very striking that these portrait photographs were the base of the police action, actually. So it was kind of visible that the police action and bourgeoisie was collaborating in a very close way, also by doing this, let's say, by repeating this method. No, the difference was, for sure, in the bourgeoisie, nobody was forced to be dressed in a certain way. Nobody was shaved by some servants of the police, but the result was kind of neat and nice. You know, when you look at the photographs, you see, for example, a cage of a bird near to a little table, and the person, a homeless person, being shaved and dressed in a shirt or something like that. So it's kind of confusing, and it's kind of scary to look at that, because it's a complete afterwards, what I want to say, anyways, it's a lie. But at the same time, these photographs were used to haunt the people, to find them in the country when they disappear. So they were also used as bases of lithographs, and afterwards multiplied for the police station. So it was actually the first, yeah, it was a model afterwards for an archive, for a gypsy archive, which was continuously enlarged in Munich and so on. So this is a little bit the base why we did our performance in a studio-like setting, and we started to decompose our stereotypes into some very personalized statements, and so transform this cliche of looking at us from outside into, we kind of changed the view of the camera, so to speak. There was the public in front of our studio. There was like a window where people could look at us, and afterwards the end was like, come on, also share with us this space. We do a public photograph all together. So in a short explanation or narrative, this was the performance. We wanted to change the gaze, change the direction of the gaze, and we wanted to make people understand that nowadays the gap of this studio idea, like looking at us, being taken away, what is exotic and what should be sold for money, but which is just a robbery actually from the culture, is not anymore okay. And it was a very simple, in a way, little, no, simple is not the right word. It was complex, but at the same time, it was a very clear idea. What we wanted to destroy the stereotypes, and we did it on scene, on stage. What else? Yeah.
Maybe you should speak about the picture.
Yeah.
We are a musician, but really we are not musician.
You mean, yeah, okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, what we did is using the stereotypes to fake an identity, to put a mask on, actually, which was absolutely not serving our. No, serving. Maybe you say something now, because I said so many things.
Yes, so Modina joined by Armaki, who you are two members of the trio collective Roma. Yes, so Roma Jam Session Art Collective.
In this picture, we are musician, but in the real life, we are not musician. We do that because so many Roma, they are popular, like good musician,
or card readers or so.
And that way we talk, okay, we start like musician, and we want to look the reaction from the public. and it was very amazing.
Yeah, actually 2013, when we did this, it was interesting, because there was no RJSaK, there was no Rome archive, there was no, like, all these kind of institutions which help now to understand a little bit about the history and about the struggles until nowadays, and going back to history to also understand that there is a lot going parallel, and people are fighting and struggling, everybody in his and her place. And when we started to work, we were a little bit like blinded. We were looking for each other, and we found each other because somebody in Schiethalle, in an art space, was programming this discourse. And luckily, because we already were artists and researching our backgrounds and trying to find out what we can do to little bit be activist, not only little bit, just being activists, find some alliances. We found each other. It was so important to have a space where we could find each other and be safe. And there we could talk and we could find out that we have the same, maybe not all the same ideas, but we have a lot of similarities in ideas of getting into the public, being activists, fighting for the rights, and getting also together and be strong together, much stronger than in a single artwork we felt. So we wanted to do something together. And actually, Tableau Très Vivant was the first, very, very first work we did together. So maybe I struggled a little bit to explain it because it was so many things in one. We got to know each other. We have never worked before together. So we had to kind of experiment so much. Yeah. So it was 4 nights where we showed our findings. And in the beginning, you can imagine it was like falling into the cold water. We didn't know, so we tried out and then we got better and better. So each night it was like we found what we could, and we always found more. But the basis were these researches, which are quite wonderful to having found. And there is an archive of all these photographic plates, which have been shown in a photo museum in Winterthur, if somebody is interested. But out of that we found the base on which we could work. And this space to find was actually so important. So we had a space, we could build a space, and we could work in this space, and we could discuss among each other and with the public. That was actually the wonderful start we remember as we look at all these pictures, making a publication. We were looking at this work and we thought, oh my God, that's really interesting how it started. So the collective is a very important element in Switzerland, especially because we without being a collective, it would have been very, very much more difficult to do work on that subject. And like this, we had a strength inside, and if outside was not so really collaborating and working and so on, it was not stopping us, So that's something which we experienced, and maybe we have given some impression. I don't know if somebody has a question also, or
I have to say that way for us is the poster very important. We are strong together if we work together. It's very important for the collective, but also for Roma community.
Yes, thank you for this intro of your work through that artwork, which implies the stereotypes and ways that a collective, as understood as a community, has been rejected by something which is not necessarily collective, but actually a border, a fence, in the narration of the hegemony. And we will come back to that on how to defy it without going also in the same linear, the same trajectory of becoming rigid, but still having the protection of coming together. So thank you, Modina and Aramaki, first for this impression. I will go in that same screen before I have you then on bigger screen again to the work of Sujatro Ghosh. And this is one way to bring in a very violent political situation in India, where women face further actions of resulted ideological activities and actions, oppressions. I would here pause to let you tell us the necessity of that work you're doing in general and specifically in that artwork.
Thank you so much to Roma Biennale and the curators for making me a part of this conversation. And also thank you, Alete, for the introduction. I'm Sujatro Ghosh. I'm from Kolkata. And here the picture you see is from my work called the Cow Mask Project. And through this project, I tried to make a impression of the Indian state, what we live in. So being an artist, I always believe that it's very important to reflect the times we are living in. And the picture you see is exactly a reflection of the times we are living in. Even in the Western world, probably India has an image of a nation which promotes yoga, but it does have a fascist government in power. So through this picture, as you can see, this is something which can't be normal, right? And this is something what we are not used to, and exactly that is the state what we are living in. What we see in India, that is something what we are not used to. So the mask is a form of expression coming from the ancient Greek theater, and here you see a woman wearing a mask, and this is by doing this particular photo, I tried like photo series or the work, I tried to ask the explicit question that is a cow is a cow more safe than a woman in this country? So after the rise of the extreme right-wing government in India in 2014, the cow became a political animal, and the cow became a symbol of Hindutva ideology, which is extremely fascist, and they come from they idealize the Nazi regime in Germany, and it's older than the Nazi regime. It's almost 120 years old. So that's the ideological party, which is the RSS, and RSS and BJP, they came to power in India in 2014, and the cow became an animal by where people started getting killed. And also in the same time, there were incidents that by official figures that there was a rape in every 15 minutes in the country. So I tried to draw a line between both these issues, and I tried to ask the explicit question that is cow safer than the women in the country. So there are several other pictures. Like if you go through the website of the Biennale, you would find what's going on. But yeah, that's mostly it. And for me personally, this was the mask was a form of expression coming from the ancient Greek theater. That was at that point of time, masks were used to express certain things. And specifically, I use that mask because the situation in India is so violent that the women I was photographing, it was important to keep their identities anonymous. And through this mask, the anonymity could be achieved. And yeah, so that's kind of sums up the project from the outlook.
Yes, and when you say project, I have to think of projection again, on how also in your work, the tools of the visibility is being at work in the sense of reversing it. So at the same time, being a protection of within the ideology of the ideologic rigid, oppressive state. So if we say white, we have to understand white is not the color. It is a mental a mind space, and it has variations. I would like to, before we open up the discussions together with Delaine and Hamza Petici, and both of the co-curators will tell us also about, in general, the need to come together also here, and the iterations that we will have in further days as in Freiburg and further moments. I would like to bring another aspect in artistic work, that is as much resistance, but also something that is a difficulty for a group of community that has not been regarded as part of a common. And this is the work here by Delaine, which is, I would say, very straightforward, a drawing that doesn't want to be regarded as in any ways aesthetic. It is written by hand. This is the main element. So it has this personal component, and it has a name that is actually one that diminishes and excludes Roma people. So I would myself not want to pronounce it. I would just say the Z word for those who are not here with the visible organs, but with the ears. And Delaine, maybe you would like to give a context to that work.
Thanks, Arlette, for your introduction to the talk this evening. And thanks to everyone else who's here. It's very good to hear about people explaining their works themselves. Yeah, well, I will say the word. It's got Zigeuner sauce written across the front of it. And it was a piece of work actually that I did as a drawing in early November 2017, where me and my late husband were involved in the herb salon at Gorky Theatre, and it is based on a work, as it's got written on there as well, after Betty Saar, which was made in 1973, which was the Liberation Aunt Jemima cocktail. And it's also related to the Pupletovs, which were used in the Venezuelan protests in May 2017, which was otherwise also called the March of Shit, where they literally threw these bottles full of shit at the police. The protesters did. So it's a protest, and it's against it's sort of taking it back in one way, but throwing it back, if you know what I mean. So I actually use this is now in a publication because I actually did it as a durational performance piece. I actually, and my language probably isn't, for some people, they might find my language a little bit harsh, but I actually pissed in bottles over a durational period of 4 hours and 27 minutes, which was the time that it took Dominic Cummings, who at the time was the chief advisor to Boris Johnson, to drive from London to Durham under the lockdown, which he wasn't supposed to do. And so it was also this idea that the government was also taking the piss out of the people. And so it was like it's a statement on many levels about this whole idea of people saying one thing and doing something else as well. So it's sort of working on many different levels and trying to talk about lots of different things at the same time. And I'm making, in the way that I've drawn it, I'm not making any apologies for what it is. It's like it is what it is. And it's like almost throwing it back. You know, I'd really like to throw this bottle full of piss at people, to be quite honest with you, because I think some of them need that. Because they don't listen continually. But it's an artistic weapon. So it's not a physical weapon. I'm just putting it out there as an artistic statement as well, because my late husband used to say art materials are weapons. And so therefore I'm sort of using it in that one, using my artistic skill. So I make no apologies for it. It is what it is. And I know for a lot of people, just to see the word is pretty unpleasant, but it's like, it's also what it is. And it's like trying to make people think about it. And I think sometimes that you have to do sometimes like the obvious thing in order to grab people's attention and make them try and think about things, because sometimes the subtleties just don't seem to work with them. And at some points I've just got tired of starting at point zero over and over and over again. I'm 55 years old now, and I find it excruciatingly painful to have these conversations over and over again, because you feel like you're going backwards, not forwards. So yeah, so that's it really, I suppose.
Yeah, it's also important to point out to what you also mentioned regarding the denomination, which goes back to a Greek denomination meant as untouchable, this Z word. And yeah, if we think about how being together is essentially human, and how they are these factors that drift us apart, it is a force to constantly come against it and come together against it and still not losing energy. With that, I will have a question to Hamze, who your works are manifolded. I think about one documentation, a film that you did on Josef Mika, for example, personality in Czech Republic, who's in constant confrontation and with such a generosity for all people, all beings, as I have had the chance to encounter, to meet him. And you are in various expressive forms. If now that Delaine talked about arts and art material as a weapon, in fact, Sujatro, also you mentioned art as a weapon to bring up these topics on violence. And we have listened also to Armaki and forget me, there's so many names. Again, sorry? Mo, who you talked about the specific gaze as also one weapon that you are reversing. Hamze, by thinking of this biennial and of these moments of violence, with that force that can generate by understanding that, for example, the murder or the attempt of murder of Roma people has been one that reminds us that by coming together, we can have different weapons. They have chosen anything that was there, but the main force, the main weapon was actually the one that is not destruction. How do you perceive that biennial in these topics you have and the moments of coming together?
Thank you, Arlette, and thank you for everybody who are part of this beautiful panel. It's an honor also for us to have this discussion, because resistance and resilience is not something that we kind of invite. It was something that we all have to talk more than usually. So this is the second phase of the second Roman biennial. And we also had some doubts about how we can go forward, because we start 1 year before and the pandemic shows us that not everything is possible. Even what we could do is not so easy. And we thought the easiest way to explain the pain, but also the beauty of our culture, and also the demand, and also the struggle, and all these things could be just through art. And it was very, very difficult. And then we came to this idea with the posters and with this online exhibition. And we are very happy now to also to have this great feedbacks, and also from the public, that people say there was so much things that we first didn't know, but if we go deeper, we have to say really honestly, we even don't know a clue about this culture. We just maybe know something like it seems you're from India, or this is what people said, but it's mostly white men who wrote something about it. And also from Sujatro's picture with the cow, I was also inspired, and I just want to show a little bit of my horoscope. And we thought it is great if we also can have something like space that is not just four walls. So the ongoing interdisciplinary artistic performance that we are doing with the Hilton Zimmer 437 is something like also idea that we got from an artist who was a scholar from Boys. So the room is something like a space where we generate also questions, and we even don't have direct answer of this. So I'm now invited in my hometown in Freiburg, and the title of this festival here is Dear White People. And it's about that we have now the possibility to speak out what we are thinking. So I'm a little bit nervous, but also and happy to be in my hometown in Freiburg and to have this experiment to see what is possible, because dear white people means also something for us in the way of 165 years of slavery and the Second World War, and there is ongoing things, and it's mostly the dominant majority who is always have the think or the right to be over us and to and to do that.
There was
I mean, 2021 one.
There was a short interruption. I didn't hear everything.
Where you
it's a connection.
I don't know where you missed me.
When you wanted to give more insight on Freiburg.
Now in the Schwarzwald.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I'm in the called Black Forest. The Wi-Fi is not the best here, but the nature is beautiful. And I just would like to say that this possibility that this performance, Dear White People, is also something like a step as an activist to my childhood, or to my first possibility to be here in Germany and to have the possibility also to ask things, to find a way with my own identity as Roma, because the first time that I declared that I'm Roma was here in the city. So friends of me, they know me earlier as Turkish or Italian or Greece, Albanian or whatever. But my father said before, I would say don't do this because maybe it's not so good for you. And now this is also something to tomorrow to scream it out, dear white people. Here I am, and we have to talk a lot. We have to talk about resistance. We have to talk about resilience. Talk about not only the Second World War, but what you are doing now is you try to destroy something like a symbol that you give us as a sorry. The memorial is built 2012. The former Reichsbahn who tries to destroy it, and we even don't got the possibility and the public that we have something like a movement that goes on the streets and is loud, because this is something that I would say it's really kind of a nightmare. And for this, the second phase is also here kind of an invitation to be more in discussion with our aim, but also that people from our community, but also people who are allies of us who are producing it. Yeah.
Thank you for these for this context, also to know what is coming next, and that you point out also to the context. You know, what you're doing in Schwarzwald is something else that, for example, Roma Jam Session Art Collective is doing in Zurich. If I recall, Modina, what you said before and what happened and the time you were forming as a collective, we have to say also Milena Petrovic as the third member of your collective in 2013. We have heard, I mean, at least from that part of the globe in Germany, I heard of several these referendums that ask the hegemonic society if or not they are fine with having mosque or further spaces togetherness, of religion, and but you talked about the bourgeoisie and the police, so on how they work together, and how for you it was important to come together. If I ask, how is it that you understand yourself as coming together? What were these elements? Because there is one view from the outside and what makes us as being a community, but then there's one from the inside. And I think there's also the need to not necessarily give everything out there on how you understand yourself as being together. So this is how I see that the projection you're giving is actually a mask, is not to come too close to what in your understanding makes you being a collective, a community.
I would say we, even in this performance, you saw just the picture of which was a set before or after, I don't remember. It was the first act of 3 acts where we masked like that, and we were in these stereotyped gestures, yeah, frozen. But afterwards, we tried to kind of break that, and we undressed, and we kind of stepped over the studio's
Door.
yeah, door, something like that, or the window. We passed the window, and we kind of addressed people directly. So, and we also involved them. We said, maybe get up. We make a photographic setting. So it was like a playing, like a laboratory where we asked for participation. It was also an inversion.
Oh, you muted?
Yeah, I understand. Also, so you didn't hear nothing. I wanted to say we inversed also here a bit the not only the gaze but the action. After a while, we undressed the stereotyped dressings, and we stepped over the door of the studio, and we asked people to enter. So it was like changing the roles and making people participate to our performance, exactly, and also be an object for the machine, which was handled by somebody whom we just chose by sort, by wie sagt man denn? Yeah, we just it was a hazard who was the person. So it was this kind of thing, and it was a little bit an absurd game where people started to ask themselves, where am I now? Am I part or not? Why should I be part of? And who are these people and what do they bring and stuff like that. So we told some personal stories which were background of our contemporary life, and it was so normal usually that people could think about their own lives, maybe, because it was nothing extraordinary in this daily life thing. So it was a little bit like what you asked is, we tried to make the masks like opaque and sometimes transparent. So it's not that we hide, but for sure we have in the collective, we have private sessions where we talk, where we trust each other, tell each other some stories which are maybe, it's like the safe space we have. But when we go out in performance, then it's always clear for us that we want not just give a mask. We want to break this mask actually and show a little bit of our, let's say, maybe I wouldn't say similarities, it's same but different, you know. So we're human, we are having a background which is very important, and it has to be acknowledged, and it has to be said, it has to be worked, it has to be healed. But the healing comes with the communication. The healing comes also with acknowledging each other's need for healing, actually. And that's what we do when we do detox dance, for example. We have a performance where we invite people to work on a little dance, some dance patterns, and there we call it detox dance, and it's a group activity where people learn something from us, but at the same time they share themselves and others space, and we do something together, which is a good thing to do because it makes us feel a togetherness which maybe is temporary, but it's a very healing moment, and that's very beautiful. And if we repeat it in one space or another or so, there is a lot of talking about it, and people want to do it because they feel it's opening something, it's healing a sort of relationships, sort of ideas, sort of even the body, you know, because you use it and you have pleasure. So it's even for personally for yourself, it's just a little healing moment of relaxation. But at the same time, it's also, yeah, it's what it is. It's making contacts. It's a relational thing, and it's much more difficult to keep your stereotypes if you don't have a relation to the world, to other people, to break this wall between this wall between the one and the other. If this can be done in a kind of laboratory way or in kind of a playful way, maybe. We always hope that this happens, and sometimes we're successful. We have found friends like that. We have found allies. We have found a lot of people's solidarity, actually, through such actions. Well, that's in a way rather breaking a mask, I would say.
When you talk, I cannot else than also making the remark that you're also in a very fluid visibility. I mean, it's easy if you come more in the front, but I would say something about the words that are like the driving force also of that panel today, and which is also that people can see in the gallery. Hamza, you talked about the gallery and online exhibition that you have, and part of the artist is the Roma Jam Session Art Collective that has, for example, these words as manifestations in frequency, and one are we are strong together if we work together, and the one that we also saw behind our marquee is nothing about us without us. I would like to ask Modina, when you talked about the body and the detoxification that is also important for the hegemonic society, mainly
yes, I know.
because they are the ones that don't even feel that there's a problem, so they need to be related to the body, and of course the ones who face that violence, but we're in a constant conscious state, and it needs for us also to come together. So where to take this energy of doing the labor, but still also protecting our energies. I have the question on the aspect of futurism and the living and non-living bodies. Maybe a question to our Marquis.
Sorry, once again.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are two aspects that are important in your works, which is aspect on futurism and the one on living and non-living bodies. So the body as understood as the one that is living, or we can say one that is in the visible space and one in the non-visible space.
Exactly, this is the way from Modena. You're more futuristic than me.
It's not the right question.
My strong way is the graphic poster, and I work together with more.
Yeah, it's true. We work all together, but you are always like proposing posters, and so it's kind of, yeah. So maybe, shall I answer? Okay.
Yes, please, as it's very vital for your work.
Yeah, because I'm the performer more than the graphist, and the writer also, and so on. Yeah, I want the living bodies for sure. It's all what is alive. It's giving out energy. It's taking in energy. It's an exchange. And if we do not have exchange of these energies, it sounds maybe quite, yeah, esoteric in a way, but it is also measurable. So it is absolutely possible to nowadays to understand that energies are exchanged, and if there is a blockage in communication, there is no possibility to keep strong, no, because it's a loss. And what we try to do, and therefore is always this liquid body, and this liquid social body is something which always comes back in our work and is kind of a center of our work. So it is through some techniques I learned in Tai Chi and other techniques I learned for relaxation. I just took some knowledge which my body learned and brought it together with forms which in our collective were like gestures or memories of dances. And we put together with a dance choreographer, we put together a dance, which was detox dance. It was written down, it was a notation, so we could learn it. And all what is about living bodies, it's also always movement, because we have the micro movements in our body, like cellular movement, organs, and so on. But it is, as I learned, it is all connected. And as we move the body, we also move our heart, our soul, our thoughts. Everything starts to move and starts to liquefy. So it is when we make some trainings, no, you feel that. You told me very often, I feel much better, and not, which would be a very simple thing to say, but it was also better in many ways, no. It's kind of like there is a healing process going on when you do that, because we had also some needs for that in the collective. There was an illness which had to be healed for sure. That was not the performance doing it 100%, but it was healing very fast. And that is somehow a proof for us. And I can maybe say something about the non-living bodies. I think it's always a form. I mean, the non-living bodies could be stones, or could be also our ancestors, no? I mean, it could be something which is not anymore visible on planet Earth, but is still kind of in our memories, and therefore there is some energy still in us from them. And so we kind of get a little bit sensitive to that too, because we start to understand that this is a part of our life, that we are part of a history. And the history is maybe non-living bodies anymore, not anymore living bodies, but they are all present in a way in our history. And that is what gives me a lot of energy, and it gives me a lot of inspiration to work. And I do not exactly know everybody's private dealing with that, but I can say from my side that I wouldn't say use, but I can refer, and I'm grateful for that. And it started when I was starting to dig into the past, but not only in forensic archives, but also inside of myself. And then I started to understand that there is a lot of information. I have just to dig it out. and that was what I did. And I think it started to be stronger and stronger the more I was listening. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to talk about how politics are affecting directly the body, something that we think is an idea on how violent this is. And there I would like to talk about India and the constitution. Sujatro, you mentioned the change in the political government since 2014. Myself, I've experienced in protest by the beginning of 2020 with India communities of that are part of India here in Berlin. And they have been really vital on underlining the constitution of 1950. And for me, it was interesting to see how actually here, when we have protest, it is to criticize the constitution that enables things like exclusion. But there they mention that actually it is important to remind that we have been through that, through the understanding that we don't want to exclude, and we understand our societies as coming together. And so to remind that constitution, it prohibits discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. The state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. What is at the moment this urgency that you see is important to address in relations to women, specifically women in India?
First of all, the constitution has become a hollow pillar which the Indian democracy stands on top of, and it's really sad to see that. But all the words where secularism, equal rights, these all kind of seem hollow in the times what we are living in. So it's in terms of what we have reached, the marginalized community, as well as, like, of course, like the minorities, be it women, be it Dalits, be it the Muslims who are staying in India, has been under the gun for since inception. Now, I think the problem is way more deep rooted than what we see, because these are things which are happening very institutionally. Like, India has been a country which was under the colonial rule, and from the time of colonialism, many things have changed, but there are certain things which we tend to carry forward. And in that particular way, I think the taboos what we carry forward has kind of brought us to the situation what we live in. And as I said, in terms of statistics, like, there are every 15 minutes there's a rape of a woman, like sexually violated, and like these are things which are official records. So there are many things which is going underreported, and there are no official records of that. And like, other than that, there are, for example, atrocities against Dalits, and like discrimination against Dalits, or maybe, as I said, like where food has become a defining factor of a person's life, where a person is killed because of a person's particular food habit. So again, like, these all things play a part in a way where the vegetarianism kind of imposed in the Indian society is very Western in concept. Like, for example, if you really see people who can afford vegetarian food, is something which is not even from a like middle financial class. Like, people do need animal protein to be living their normal life. Like, for example, in a country like India, of course, like, veganism doesn't even become a part of it. So it's really interesting that the cow as a figure, where it's kind of seen as the mother of the Hinduism, quote unquote. There's nothing called Hinduism, but still as a way of life. But whereas in the country in general, women are not really cared about. And as I said, from the figures, there are statistics. So it's there's kind of a ill treatment and like misconception of facts, where there are made up facts, where, okay, we respect our mother, but we don't respect women in society. So I don't know what I said kind of makes sense, but yeah, it's what it's said and what is practiced is very different.
I think the difficulty in your context is that you're not necessarily addressing a view that comes outside of India and not one that is addressing diaspora in the Western conception, but from within. And I think also with having that symbol of identity, the sacred cow, you're also having critique coming from your own society. How are these, how do you go about the tools and the symbols?
See, I think it's somehow very important to really see that being a colonizer, being a part of like the colonial rule, women in India couldn't vote. So after India became independent in 1947, Indian women had the voting rights to vote in the country. Whereas women in the West, in many countries, did need to fight for their own rights. So where we come from is something what we have been made used to. This is not something where we belong. So I think there's, in the modern context, what we are living in, I think it's something which we are, there's a, again, there's a reintegration, quote unquote, is going on through the Hindutva politics in the country. So, so as the reintegration is going on, I think it's very important for artists or maybe social activists or people who are in the forefront of this resistance to really speak out against what is going on and kind of bring it out to the world. So these are the social cues as an artist I do look out for, and like that is where the whole conversation comes forward.
I just think of, because you mentioned nutrition, and I would like to invite also everyone to also pose questions, as it is a difficulty to sometimes go about many topics and being inside of it as the one that are also facing these oppressions. So with the perspective from another aspect of rigid societies, there can be ways to go about this. Myself, throughout the time of COVID especially, I've been following discussions by Vandana Shiva, and how she was really accurate in explaining how the issue of food is one that is occupied by these foundations like the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, but also how to understand that pesticide comes from one activity in the time of the Nazi regime, and how this is related to the chemicals that have been in action at the time of the moment of gas chambers. So the topic we're in also today, if you look at that, what is the threat that you feel? Because at the moment there are many threats related to the people in India. The COVID situation has been unfortunately going out of control, in the sense that people had to leave spaces where they used to work, go back to their villages. You talked about how women are in threat. Of course, we know that this is a situation in societies even more when the common society is in threat, that even women even more face this. As Gayatri Spivak says it really well when she talks about Fanon, that she says, and anything and everything Fanon says, he still didn't speak about the situation of women. So I wonder if this threat that you see in India, in the relation of one major threat that we have, the globalization, how do you go about these topics? Is it another component in your works, the global situation?
Absolutely, it is. The like where I come from in India, it's a world within a world. I have a different language, what rather quote unquote Indians speak, and I do have personal experiences of being othered. So me coming to when I came to a bigger city like Delhi, like slightly bigger than Calcutta by the size of it. So like me coming there, I had to so-called quote unquote reintegrate and like become somebody else, where I had to learn a new language, where I had to pick up many cues of that particular society in general. Now, when I am coming here, for example, in Germany, I had to do the same. And I personally believe it's very important as an artist to know a society, what we are living in, and like to make things happen in certain way. But I think in India or in the globalized world, what I see is something where there's a forceful imposition of certain things, which probably you will have to do. Like, for example, in India, there's a forceful imposition of a language. Like it's a Sanskritization of a society which is going on, where you say that, okay, you don't speak this language, you're not Indian. You need to speak this language in order to be a part of in order to be Indian enough. So I think the problem lies here that these forceful impositions do try to extend certain cultures, which is within very our own. And I think India is, again, we from east to west, from north to south, India is different. Like we have so many different cultures. We have 2 official languages, but we have like 22 listed languages. Other than that, we have hundreds and hundreds of dialects. So I think trying to see something as a global, like singular world, or maybe as one India or as one world, is something very problematic, where I think people won't really have the choice of being who they are. So I think India is at the verge of that at this moment, where India may, like, if we start thinking that India is a nation for Hindus, that is something which doesn't do justice to the social fabric of India. This is something what the kids are not studying in the books. This is something what people have not seen in while growing up. So I think we are like where we stand right now is exactly like at a point of like extinction. Like if things go on in these ways, I think we may reach a point where there would be more destruction rather than we building up something for the good. So yeah, so yes, like my work does tend to address these issues and talk about what could be the next world which we are living in. So it's a futurism is surely a part of the work itself.
Yeah, by mentioning distraction, I think also of Toni Morrison, who says that racism is a distraction, a way to constantly keep us away from being together. I think about the context, and as I understand also your answer, it is important to understand first from within what are the threats of a people that understand themselves as being together, and now talking about how within that frame there are still othering happening. I wonder, and Delaine Lebas, you mentioned how it is important for you to be really straightforward, and that you have been tired to constantly bring on the discourse again about how racism is at work in societies that are excluding communities. If we were to talk about how that is an aspect, again, to mask that it is not necessarily one specific community that is stigmatized, but it is something which I would say, also thinking about the Roma Jam Session Art Collective, it is understood as fluid, as mobile, as the people also who want to be in motion. And so there we talk about the ones that don't necessarily want to work for a system where you need to be static. We need to have one place where you are registered, people that have been threatened also by that factor. And so I would like to ask, at the moment, at least since March in the UK, there's a threat for people who are in cars, and this is a certain mask to not to say who specifically is addressed, but in our conversation previously you mentioned that it is another way to stigmatize Roma people by saying that the ones who are in movement and that they need to have a permission from the landlord, that these people have to face, for instance, 3 months in prison.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a whole thing around trespass that's going on, and there's a thing to kill the bill here in the UK, which involves not just the travelling community, but it affects everybody. So it's something that is, and there's actually a community-led, lots of activities going around it. It's called Drive to Survive 2021, actually, which they've got a website and they've got a Facebook page and everything, where they're going to be doing different sorts of protests as well across the UK at different sorts of events and things to highlight this. But the thing is that is sort of brought people together in terms of solidarity, because obviously in terms of trespass here, that affects many different people in many different ways, including like if you're, you know, we've got a massive homeless problem here that is soon going to get worse because of the there's been like an eviction holiday, so because of the COVID situation, so many people who haven't been able to pay their rent or their mortgage, who were possibly facing eviction in the past months, that eviction holiday in inverted commas, where landlords etc. have not been able to evict them, is just about to end. So also this means that anyone could possibly become a victim to this new law that's being brought in, or hope to be brought in by the government. But you know, this is one thing of many which is going on all over the place under COVID regulations, which seems to be being sort of tried to be sneaked in without people really recognizing what's really going on at the moment. So I think it's recognizing that these things happen, and also trying to, you know, it's something that Roma Jam Session Collective talk about, is also this idea of like working with other people as well, you know, and having these conversations with people and realizing that there is things that are happening to all of us collectively, that actually, to start off with, it's pointed out that it's these people over there, and so that's when the othering starts. But then in some ways we can all become the others, and we can all be othered, and we can all end up in the same situation. So it's recognizing that. And I think a lot of the work that many of the artists that we've asked to the biennial, particularly this year, and why we've got the different phases, and there's a mixture of artists who are Roma and non-Roma within that as well, are all talking about all of these different aspects really, and how this affects all of us really in a way. You know, it's something that Sujatro just said as well. It was this idea about, you know, the multiplicity as well within a group of people, and that sometimes that gets sort of also crushed down, and actually it's the multiplicity of the thing that is not only interesting but also adds to a much more interesting fabric of society. It doesn't make it less interesting, it doesn't make it less caring. It can, you know, it can add to it, not take away from it. So I think there's, you know, that I think that's some of the things we're trying to work together on as well.
Yes, mentioning Sujatro, he says goodbye to the audience. He had to leave for another work. So I'm not so sure if there are questions by the audience. Maybe it's also the moment to say that there can be questions addressed. And Veronica, who is from Roma Trial, is also transmitting the questions to the guests. Hamza, there is something you mentioned happening tomorrow in Freiburg, and addressing actually the German society. We have faced reactions of stigmatization. There was one panel at the WDR, one TV station that has reenacted that wording of the Z word, which I would call, inviting only white, ideologic white people, and talking about the ones that they address as the Z in the third person, and saying that it's fine for them. This is the way they also talk about themselves. And so to understand that form also of making someone, of silencing someone, you have reacted to that. You have positioned yourself within it, and you constantly do it. What at the moment in the German society do you think is most important, or is, especially in that situation, important to address? despite what's happening in Berlin, or also with that which is happening in Berlin related to the commemoration site.
I mean, the actual situation is crazy. That we had on Sunday votings in Sachsen-Anhalt. It's a part of the country in the east of Germany, and I mean, it's so weird that people proclaim if they vote for the Christian Democrats, they're the good ones, and they got 38%. And they feel good because the right wing got just 22%. So, I mean, the Christian Democrats are not the anti-fascists. This is something what is clear, but that we have to think about things like if we vote for the Christian Democrats, we feel ourselves as a good Democrat is the weirdness in the second phase of resistance and resilience. Because, I mean, 1 year before we had the death of George Floyd, and there was a movement, and there was something what helps also the movement in the world to resist, but also to have this feeling of resilience, because we are now in a way alliance, and we have to speak things out. And then from there was different marches, and also in Germany we had this after the attack in Hanau. There was crazy things at the beginning. The people just talked about a weird one person, a single person. But this is something that now the people of migrant history have to change. And for this, now a lot of things after the pandemic came out that if we don't speak for ourselves, nobody will do this. And Dear White People is also kind of a statement to say, okay, enough is enough. And don't silence us, but give us also the possibility of spaces. So the Hilton 437 is artistic possibility also to be also in kind of a dialogue with our own people, because we had now 2 years of independent commission of anti-Ziganism who produced 800 pages of really, really good work. But nobody listened and nobody heard from this, because the government, and again, the Christian Democrats don't want to publish it, because there was something like there is a chapter about deportation. I mean, we are talking still about human beings who are born here, who are living here since 20, 30 years, who are deported again. And I don't want to mention the Second World War and the slavery and all the shit what happened. But I mean, things are still going on. They are deported, and they try to survive in their called hometown or home country and come back. So if you ask the children where the parents are coming from, then they say they're from Kassel or they're from Dortmund or whatever. And this is the weirdness, that we have to explain the others that we are part of it. That we have to be part of Europe means also that the majority or the dominant majority have to shut up now. And Dear White People means also a platform for speaking, but to listening also, and to have a space where we also have the possibility to raise our voice, but also to have questions. Maybe they are not always comfortable, also for us, because how maybe some of us knows that in internal we have also difficulties. Like for the memorial, there is a group of the NGOs who say, or a very big NGO in Germany who say, yeah, but we are part of the society. I mean, that we still, after hundreds of years, that we have to explain the majority that we are part of this society is again the sickness that we are still in. And I mean, we have to see the bottle half full than half empty. And for that, what we are doing is to making some statement through art. And I think this is also what Delaine said, and what also Roma Jam Session do, but also Sujatro is doing, but also what people like you are led, and the Savvy Contemporary. We are explaining the others that we have to archive our body, our meaning, but also our things that we are doing. And this is a part of the process that we are still doing. So the glass is half full, but we have to be more united. And for this, we are very happy to have half of the people from artists from our community, but half who are from the whole world. So I'm very glad to have this possibility also for these discussions. And yeah.
Thank you for this. I would like to bring in a perspective from our marquee. If you would like, I will share my screen for this and propose if you would like to say something specifically related to previous work. So I will go to the technology here to go to that and that. Our marquee. So this was from 2015, an exhibition related to the Zukunft, future of history, and this is related to Europe. I wonder because there is the political agenda of the European Union to protect minorities, and as a matter of fact, Roma people are the largest minority in Europe. Without further saying ado, I would like to ask if you would want to say some words about that exhibition where we see you here together with Modina and your colleague Milena. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It was very important to have a performance at Kunsthaus, and we did it outfit, and we had pictures from our family, and it was to perform about the history of the Roma, but also about the future of the Roma. And this is the wall from Kunsthaus, and we did it at the end of the performance.
You mean the photograph? Or?
Yeah.
So these are photos of your family that we see here in the graphic, in the background?
No, it is on our clouds.
The graphic is...
the clothes.
Yeah,
I see now.
Just announcement of the exhibition, or it was the, how do you say that? The title of the exhibition. But it's not our work, this one. It's just
this is Kunsthaus.
It was part of the, exactly. So what you are wearing here, these are the ones, for example, here that you mentioned. That
we have different words. For example, I take the word Rome. I think Milena was Roma, and Mo was Romney, which means I'm Rome. Milena is Mo is Romney, and Milena is Roma, which means is plural of the Roma people. And also we wie sagt man, wir haben es gesprayt, Schablon. We take a...
Yeah, this was stencil work, which it was a collaboration, and which it's just a graphical work which marketed for the costume,
performance, yeah.
You know.
And we take, for example, Charlie Chaplin or Yul Brynner, and also who was?
Some famous Roma which were not always declared as partly Roma, and we just took them out of the archive and revived their face as a stencil, and then we used it as a design pattern.
Yeah, and it is for us important to have
ideals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
Okay, so one, like we can call him a trickster, someone who was questioning the systems of politics, of society. I wonder, because you mentioned it was important to do it in Kunsthalle. What do you mean by this? Why was it important?
It was also important because the title of the exhibition, it was Europe, and we are part from Europe. And for you, for us, it was very important to be part for this big exhibition. Yeah,
maybe to complete this thought, it's also we are the only artists who are officially standing for the activistic part of Roma in Switzerland. So that's why also, because it was an exhibition in Switzerland in a very big house, and they didn't have any Swiss Roma part in their exhibition. And maybe you can tell about the meeting you had with the curator or something. That's nice. Yeah.
If you would like to, without recalling negative energies.
Sorry?
If you would like to, without recalling negative energies, if there have been, because I think it is not always easy if we talk about spaces like Kunsthalle to address certain topics, but maybe the curator was a totally different personality.
Yeah, the curator was knowing a lot about Roma. She was living in and working in Vienna, and she had a big project with Ceja Stojka, a big Romney, not big Romney, but big Roma artist. And so she was informed about a lot of, she had a lot of background. Therefore, that was our chance actually, because it's difficult to, as you say, difficult to have a good conversation with these places. It's true, but she was wonderful. So we had a good experience in that sense. It was not a bad experience, but we felt for sure the house had a very strict rules and we had to behave in a certain way and this and that. So this was very special actually.
And it was intuition, like always.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you for this perspective. Now we have the topic of how, when we enter the spaces of hegemonic narratives, what do we bring in it? We come, unfortunately, to the term of that discussion, which I think opened perspectives that are important to continue reflecting on. I will close this shared screen to then see you all here. Unfortunately, without Sujatro, who had to leave earlier, but who's sending greetings. I would like to give the word to Delaine and Hamza, also to understand that this is the second part of a continuity, and maybe also something about the online exhibition, on how we can interact with being in the distance and still coming together. So Delaine and Hamza, there's some.
Yeah, I mean, it can go online. We tried to make everything available online, and that includes the posters. So the posters are actually in real space around Berlin in different ways, but they're also available from certain pickup points in Berlin as well. This is all on the website, and also the posters are available to download from the website, because we had this idea that anyone could then have an exhibition, really talking slightly what Mo and Mark have just remarked on, which is this idea that, you know, art is for everybody really, in a sense, and it should be available to everyone. So we thought if the posters were available to download, anyone could, if you've got a printer or you can get to a printers, you can actually get them, you can have the posters yourself as well in your own home, which we thought would be, so in some ways even though it was very difficult for us with the pandemic happening, I think in many ways this Roma Biennial has reached far more people possibly than if it had just been taking place in Berlin. We're also going to do a publication at the end of it as well, because also as well, for you to be visible, you have to insert yourself into places and institutions. So that's also one way of doing it. The website will also retain its presence. We've got Instagram and there's Facebook. So roma-biennial.org.com, put that in and you'll find all the information about all the different phases, where you can download the posters. Things are recorded, so some live events are recorded, and there's ongoing events happening. So also there's lots of different things, and there's different aspects to the project as well. And there's new works arriving all the time throughout the different phases, and it continues until the 24th of October. So there's lots more to come. But I would also like to thank all the other artists as well so far who've been involved in the biennial, and all the ones that are coming along with us for the rest of the journey as well. So yeah, so I don't know if Hamza's got anything else to say to that.
Delaine had completed completely. I just also have the honor to say thank you to Roma Jam Session, but also to Satros, but also to you, Arlette, for moderating this beautiful panel. And we are also very excited to have also the next ongoing panels, but also the artists. We are very excited to see what also will be the next days and months. So for the others, you're all very, very welcome to join our online exhibition to the page secondromabiennial.org. And yeah, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mo and Maki, who are still here and whose works we can also see online. I hope for a moment to come together in physical space, because of course the digital space is one that reaches beyond borders and is one of this non-tangible space that Mo, you talked about earlier, as our ancestors that are with us in frequencies. But I think there's nothing to replace a moment when we feel this energy in the same space. So really hope for that moment to come. I know you have many activities, so we'll surely see a moment when we will then share time space in the physical sense. I thank you all for that moment. I have been very honored to have that time space with you and the ones who are listening, who I don't see, but they're there. And yeah, I would just wish to say then we are in conversations. We continue the conversations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Arlette.
All a good evening.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Berlin, Freiburg.
Greetings.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Nicht, dass Sie denken, du würdest gerne rausgehen.
Nein, official, we are in.
Okay.
So, hört man mich? Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
The live
Arlette.
is ended.
Thank
Thank you so much.